Hey everybody! Today I want to show you how to draw a proportioned portrait using the grid method. So that is going from a gridded picture like this to a drawing like this. So let's go ahead and get started with the steps that you'll need to do this project. Okay, so let's start by going into Google Slides, and you're just going to start a brand new one. We don't need this text, so let's go ahead and delete it. You're going to go up to File, click on that, and go down to where it says Page Setup. So we are going to click on this button and go down to Custom and change it to 4:6, and that is because that is the ratio of the picture that we are wanting to draw. So 4 inches by 6 inches, click apply, and that will change the size of your canvas. Now go up to insert and then down to table, and you're going to make a table that is 4:6 squares big. Click on that and it'll pull it over here. Drag each corner to the corner of your paper, canvas, whatever you want to call this, and it should give you perfect 4:6 inch squares. Now the next step is that we want to insert our picture. So go up to Insert, go to Image, Upload from Computer, and pick the picture that you want to draw. I went ahead and grabbed this picture of Mr. Medina. We're just going to make the picture a little bit bigger so that he takes up the whole canvas. And we're going to arrange him on the page that we like the best. Now what I recommend doing is go to Order and then send all the way to the back. That way the grid is on the top of the image. You can make any final adjustments here that you would want. And then our last step for getting this ready to draw is to go up to File, and we're going to download as a JPEG. You can name this whatever you want. It'll save it right at the bottom. And then this is going to be the picture that we end up using for our drawing. That way you already have it as an image and you don't need to keep going into Google Slides in order to see your picture. You can email this to yourself, have it on your phone, your computer. This is going to be the reference for your drawing. Okay, so now we are going to grab our paper, and we need a pencil. And you'll also need a ruler for this part. Any kind of straight edge works, but it's very helpful if you actually have the inches showing on your ruler. So what we need to do is set up our grid. This is going to be the first step. We are making a 4" by 6" grid. What I like to do is put my ruler at the very edge of the paper, because that way I can at least have 2 perfectly straight edges. And so on this side, I'm going to do 6 inches. I line it up, make it as straight as possible, and then make a little mark where each inch is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is the edge of the paper. Now the next step is to make the same dashes at the bottom of the page as well. And the reason for this is because we can use these marks that we have made to line up our ruler and make sure that we get straight edges all the way across. Now I want to do the bottom of the paper, which is 4 inches. So I line it up as straight as I can. Make sure my marks are the same. You see here that I actually went to 4.5 instead of 4. So I want to count down, make sure the adjustment is right. And then I can go and make a little mark where each inch is right on the edge of the paper. And what this will do is it'll help me to figure out my exact border. And you're going to do this for each side. Since I have that straight edge up towards the top, it'll make it easier for me to create the 4 inches up there as well. But again, double check and make sure that you are actually on 4 inches. Sometimes it's hard to immediately see on your ruler depending on which one you have. And then here I'm going to make marks at the 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the edge of the paper. So as I'm working here, I now have these straight sides. I can start creating the actual border. I line up these two lines and draw a line here. Now for my outside, I do draw thicker lines, that way I can see where my actual border is. But whenever you're drawing the lines inside of your grid, you want to make them as light as possible. And the reason for that is because we're going to go back and erase them at the end. So you want to make sure that you're not pressing so hard that you are unable to erase it later. So I use that top line to do my 4 marks. And what I'm going to do now is line up each one of these to the one at the other side. And I can use any of the ones I have in the middle to make sure that they're lining up properly. Just remember to do your line pretty light because you will need to go back and erase it later. I'm going to just line these up really good, dot to dot, and then draw down. And you're going to do this for the opposite side as well. So along this top edge, we can make our 6 marks here. One at the 5. 1, 2, 3, and 4. You guys will notice that 4 is constantly confusing me, and that's okay. That happens. So now we have our dots here, and we can line them up and draw the line straight across. Whether you do it from the top or the bottom doesn't matter, just make sure that you can see them. The goal is just to make sure that our lines are straight and that they're as close to 1 inch as possible. Make sure you put a lot of pressure on your ruler so it doesn't move while you're drawing your line. That'll make it the easiest to get these straight 1 inch perfect lines for your grid. Now once we have this all done, we can turn our paper back the same way. I personally like to use the edge of the paper that I have and number it. That way I know which side is which, and it helps me to kind of identify certain squares without getting confused. So up here at the top, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And down the side, let's do the alphabet. So let's do A, B, C, D, E, and F. And now that will tell me that this square is 1A, and maybe this square here is 2D, and it lets me identify exactly where those squares are. But now our next step is that we want to make this as light as possible. So I'm going to go through and erase any very bold areas. I'm going to erase it just enough to where I can barely see the grid. You don't want to make it to where you've erased all of your hard work, but you can still see it yourself. It might become really hard to see on camera, but whenever I am drawing it, I can still very, very lightly see exactly where all of my squares are at. And that's going to be really important for the next step. So clean it up really good. You'll see that this part might take a little while to get it nice and erased, and that's why it's really important to draw as lightly as you can, because if you draw really hard lines, then it's hard to go back and erase. So if you draw lightly at first, it'll save you a ton of time. Okay, so now we can get started on our drawing. Okay, so this part will be sped up just a little bit to help save time, but the first thing I'm going to do is do the outline of the contour of the body. So as a reminder, a contour is just another word for like the outline of what you are looking at. So you want to follow the shape of the silhouette of what you see in your picture. Here you can see that I outlined the silhouette in red on Mr. Medina's face to help you kind of see what it is that I am outlining on the paper. Once I have this overall shape of the silhouette that fits in with the grid, I'll go ahead and start doing the interior contour lines, the interior outline of what I see. You want to still continue to draw pretty light. That way it's easier to go back and shade or make any edits or changes as you are drawing. So as I am sketching this out onto the paper, I'm following the grid on the picture in order to figure out where my proportions are. You'll see that as I am drawing the glasses, I noticed that I had the glasses too high on my square because the glasses come about halfway down the actual square itself. So I needed to lower the top of the rim of the glasses in order to be about halfway where the square was at. And this allowed me to make sure that I was able to fit in the eyebrows into that same square without it going too high. Every time you are looking at the picture, you want to focus on just one square at a time, and that will help you to get the proportions as close as possible without having to imagine what you're drawing. So it's really important that you're following the picture as close as possible and not trying to make up what you see. You want to follow it as close as you can so that your proportions are accurate, and this will help you to draw as realistically as possible. Here on the picture, I'm continuing to just go through and make sure my lines are as accurate as they can be, but I'm still drawing pretty light because I don't want to start adding in the shading until I make sure all of my proportions are correct. This whole process took me about 10 minutes to get everything sketched on this smaller paper, but again, it is sped up just to help you see the process a little bit faster. Now that I have everything sketched up, I'm going to go ahead and start shading. I'm doing this whole drawing with just a pencil, but notice that I start on the super dark areas first. And the reason for this is because it helps to start create the form by adding in where the shadows are going to be at, especially the harsher shadows. But I don't want to start going in super duper hard with my pencil yet, just because with pencil you want to be able to layer in and make your stuff darker. Once I know exactly where those super dark areas are going to be, the areas that are solid black on my paper, then I'm able to start going in with a much harder press of my pencil in order to get the darker lines. Something I want to point out is as I was drawing the ear here, you notice that the ear is pretty much completely dark and that there's no details there. Even though I know that ears have certain details to them, you don't want to draw in what you can't actually see in the picture. Try to draw only what you see in the image, and then even if you know that there's supposed to be parts in that ear, if you can't see them, you still want to copy what you see in your picture because that's going to be the most realistic. Here you see that I took a small piece of paper and put it under my hand, and that was to help me not to smear my pencil around as I was shading. This is a really good way to keep it clean if your pencil has a tendency to smear too much. However, whenever you are shading and you want to smooth things out, you can use smearing to your advantage, just like this, in order to get more smooth gradations on the face. So now I'm going to go in and continue to add in layers and layers. It's better to add in light layers several times than to go in too dark. That way you can get a nice variety of light and dark. Don't forget about your different elements of design, such as texture and value. You want to have plenty of range of light and dark in your picture in order to make it look as realistic as possible. Now that we're here at the end of the drawing, I want to go back and erase any lines that I can still see from my grid, especially lines that might still be in the face, because you don't want to be able to see that grid inside of the face. You want to get rid of as much of that grid as you can. And there we have it. This whole drawing took about 20 minutes to shade, but again, it was all sped up so that you didn't have to watch the whole 20 minutes. Thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.